Legibility is readability, the capacity to be correctly perceived or clearly deciphered. It is necessary in every brand design. Let's talk about it. Legibility is a function of contrast, and contrast is a function of value. It doesn't matter so much what the hue or saturation is in the colors. What matters most for contrast is sufficient difference in value. Any logo that has low contrast and therefore has low legibility has failed in its very reason for being, to be clearly seen and read. There are two major kinds of contrast, and they are both essential for good corporate identity: external contrast and internal contrast. External contrast means having good value difference between the design and the background. Internal contrast means that the logo elements can be distinguished from one another. A good identity has both. As with other areas of legibility, this principle is made worse when objects are small or when viewed at a distance. Remember, the issue is not whether a person can actually figure out eventually what they're looking at, but whether the designs in questions are easy to see. What sane designer would make an identity that is hard to decipher? This is another drawback in using gradients or multiple colors in a logo. One area may have sufficient contrast, but another area may not. As we discussed before, it is helpful to think of values of colors as percents, 100% as black, 0% as white, etc. Since the signature needs to be easily read to be effective, it needs to have 60% contrast or more with its background. A logo can have less, as little as 40% with the background. But if a logo has multiple colors, not something that is recommended in the first place, then the elements inside need to have 30 or 40% contrast from each other to be effective. One of the recurring pitfalls that unwise designers fall into is trying to use all three primary colors in an identity. It never works. Look at the former Family Channel logo. It had terrible contrast on both light and dark backgrounds because the designer insisted on using the primary colors. Yellow is very light color and consequently doesn't show up well against a white background. Most shades of blue are too dark to show up against a dark background. Red is usually a mid-value color and will not give excellent contrast against even a light or a dark background. Therefore, any identity that uses all three primary colors is guaranteed to have some part not show up, no matter what color background is used. It's one of those great ideas that isn't great after all. Here is a selection of real logos that have horrible contrast. Those with too light color have poor overall contrast and therefore poor legibility on a white background. Some have poor internal contrasts. Here is the grayscale version of those samples from the previous slide. It is an accurate representation of the inherent values of all of those colors. The reason why they each fail is because there is not sufficient difference in value to give contrast. Legibility is a function of contrast. Every one of these logos fail completely at this. A designer can sculpt the most exquisite shapes with the best proportions and then ruin the design by choosing colors that give poor contrast. Sounds like a blowout, doesn't it? To sum up, any logo with poor overall or internal contrast has failed its primary function to be easily seen and recognized. That's a deadly sin of logo design. For more information, go to logodesigntheory.com. If you found this helpful, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and share this with anyone who needs to know more about logo design.